Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Cott, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Strength in the Numbers. Now, sometimes we have guest mentors that come onto the show and they've just had so many pieces and nuggets of really great advice, whether it be for our career or just even outside of our career. And they're just such wise words. Well, today's guest mentor, Paul Sweeney, is one of those who fits into this category. And Paul's picked up these experiences over many years working in and around finance. So he's got such great perspectives to share. And one of the main ones we cover on this show is why today's finance professional needs to have an extra. Why that extra matters and how we can practically go about delivering this and having an extra in our work. We also deconstruct the finance professional's approach to technology because of Paul's background in finance software, and also today's attitude around development towards getting better on technology and data. And Paul also shares some further great advice around Excel, salesmanship, and a great question he got from his father. So look, this episode is really jam-packed with loads of value. I really encourage you to listen intently to it. And if you want to follow up on the show notes, you can check these out at sitnshow.com/podcast/078. And don't forget to let your colleagues and friends know about the show and share with those who you think might get some value from some of the great advice that Paul shares with us today. That's enough for me, so without further ado, over to Paul and the show.
So really, I got started when I went to university. I studied commerce, and obviously part of the commerce program is accounting. And so that was my fundamentals, and I kind of went away and did a few other things along the way. And then I found myself working in a business that needed some software to help us manage inventory. So we went out, we found a piece of software, and in the process of implementing it, I discovered I'm teaching the consultant things. So at the end of that, the consultant said, well, would you be interested in coming joining us? So I thought to myself, well, that sounds kind of interesting. Certainly more interesting than what I'm doing. And so I transitioned into software and ERP systems. And I've been doing that ever since.
I suppose it wasn't a deliberate move. It was just an opportunity came and it sort of led you to where you are now. Right?
That's correct, yes.
And I suppose in terms of that journey, you've probably seen quite a few things, but maybe would there be one or thing or a couple of things that really stand out in your mind as quite memorable during that journey?
Yeah, there's a few things one of the things I see that I get disappointed in is a combination of the people in the space as the value-added resellers and to an extent the customers oversell and overbuy, rather than be realistic about what's appropriate for the circumstance.
Yeah. Do you mind elaborating? I think I appreciate, because again, I work in an IT environment, but if you could maybe elaborate for our audience on that oversell and overbuy concept.
So one example is, a customer I ended up working with that when they bought the software, they were sold a whole set of capabilities that they still to this day don't use, right? And to me, it's what I see is the vendor is just loading up whatever they can to make sales, and it's not necessarily in the customer's best interests. But then the customer also can have unrealistic ideas of what they need. I've seen companies say, well, we need a tier 1 solution. Well, if your business isn't that complex, why would you spend that kind of money? And a lot of them don't realize that you've got to feed that machine to keep it running, right? So they really don't have a sense of what they're getting into. But they think they need this big software because they're a big company.
So, like, is there any sort of checks and balances that, I mean, I'm sure there is, but like in your mind, what would be the appropriate checks and balances would be on the behalf of the customer to make sure they're not overbuying and only buying what it is they need?
Well, the very first thing is that my suggestion to people is don't buy everything all at once.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get these things up and running and to get value out of them. So the add-on things, if they're not going to be part of the first phase of your implementation, don't buy them. Right? Get it up and running first, then add things on as you go and as you need them and as you're actually going to use them. Because in the process of doing the implementation, you may discover that, oh, we can do this same thing some other way that's equally effective. So now I don't need that. Right? Or something in the business changes and that plan is no longer valid.
Yeah, because that's actually a common. See, again, I think as finance professionals, we tend to have quite a good broad view across the business, or at least should have. So we should have a good sense of what's important for now and maybe potentially down the line. Because again, we should be taking a longer term view as well as trying to make sure things are working at the moment. But I hear that a lot with robotics or robotic process automation, is that it's brought in to go and replicate a particular process now. But if the business model changes or customers' expectations change, then that might need to adapt. So what was purchased originally or expected originally will also have to change. And that's the last thing you want to be, is to buy something and not be able to get value from it, or make it even worse. It's inflexible and it's in effect nearly written off.
Yes.
Because we didn't think forward into the future in hindsight. But I mean, that's a challenge, I suppose. How do we help people overcome that one? Or how can we help businesses overcome that one, that sort of hindsight or that regret of having to write things off that we've entered into in good faith?
Well, yeah, and that one's tough, right? Because when things change, you can't really anticipate a lot of changes that are going to have this kind of an influence where you go, oh, this software is no longer any good, or this robotics, or right. Some of those are not predictable, but from what I've seen, a lot of it comes back to how well do you really understand your business, and how well do you really understand what tools are going to help you move your business forward.
Yes.
Right. So, the analogy I like to make is we'd all like to have a Ferrari, and buying the Ferrari is quite possible, but keeping it on the road is something completely different.
Excellent analogy. Yeah.
Right. So when you go out to buy software, it's a similar thing, right? Buying it is one thing, installing it and getting it running is one thing. But then what's your plan for keeping it running and continuing to get value out of it? Right. Yeah. Because the piece that I see is fairly common is people are not curious. So
yeah.
When you put the piece of software in, I teach you the capabilities to get it running. And then if we don't continue to be engaged, that's where your learning stops. Right. And that's that lack of curiosity to me is a very big thing that impacts the value you can achieve from anything that you bring into your business.
Yeah, it's there's a lot there coming together in my mind, Paul, because you touch on some of the things I think they're sort of modern traits or that finance professionals need to have in the future. One is actually a knowledge of how technology tools, or even how we can leverage data that those tools help bring to our business's attention, how to make the most of those into the future, not just today, but have some ideas. What does it mean for the future and how to best leverage them? But two other things is sort of that appetite for acumen, that curiosity to try and figure out, again, how can we leverage them, experiment with them, expect to fail a bit, but also expect to learn and progress, and then also engage with the business and engage the mind. I mean, it's just it frustrates me a little bit, like that we're not necessarily developing those skills in future finance professionals. Are sort of being done on the job or more by forward looking people or organizations. And this could come back to some of the points and comments I don't know what we've shared online and offline around on LinkedIn around the quality of people, you know,
Yes.
and the challenge of hiring good quality people, whether in a large enterprise or a much smaller enterprise. It's a common challenge I'm hearing from leaders of both, and with my own experience of both. So I think in terms of yourself, I think you had a very very good expression, which was one of the things you actually help do is help businesses run with fewer people in them, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess with a view, as I think we've been sort of saying, is because that sort of reduces the pressure then to have to continually keep finding good quality people.
Yep. Right. And it's a tool for helping you retain them, the ones that you do find, right? Because they don't get bored. They don't find themselves saying, this is really not that fun.
Yeah.
Right. Or I want to do stuff that's more challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like if we come back to the finance group, the number of times I've seen somebody build a report in Excel that's taken a report from their software, exported it, stripped out all the formatting and unnecessarily stuff, and done VLOOKUPs and done this to create a report. And I look at this and say, well, did you not think that there's a better way? And just like being in school, lift your hand. Hey, I have a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And that is part of the thing where going forward, if people in the finance profession, I think would do themselves a great service by saying to themselves, is there another way?
Yeah.
Right? Just ask the question. And one of the things that I have seen in my experience is that people that are successful are really good, not so much at knowing the answer, but knowing who to ask the question to.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So in the world we're discussing, if you are working with software, we have a partner that knows that software that you can have that conversation with. Say, hey, I need this report, or I'm doing this. Is there another way? You leverage their knowledge, and that partnership can produce great value for you and great value for the business.
But it does come back to the key points you've already shared, which is one is knowing that the tools are out there, two is engaging with a partner, and three is having the curiosity to ask the question.
Yeah. And being open, right? And I find that there's a lot of people that just want to put their head down and do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is, every role has that need where there are things you need to put your head down. But I see in the finance roles, there's a whole lot of opportunity for people to approach it in a different way, and to bring the intelligence and the knowledge that the finance profession can bring to a business.
Yeah, well, look, yeah, as finance professionals, I think a good test is how well do we know our businesses, and how well do we know who is in our businesses? Because if we don't know who, then how do we know who to ask or best ask? And like, again, I think maybe the profession grew up from us doing that type of work that didn't require us to go out and engaging, which is sitting at our desks, adding things up, producing reports, pulling data together. Maybe that's just an area generally for development, which is, oh yeah, you can actually get out from behind your desks and have some interesting conversations with people, figure out how things work, and we might learn how to make our own jobs better and also add value for the business. I mean, I suppose in your experience, you've got a lot of hands-on experience, Paul, around the financial and the ops systems development. Like when it's working well, what does that look like? Where have you seen it work well, and what does that look like?
Where I see it's working well is when the finance group is less focused on the transactions and more focused on creating value from what the transactions are showing. Right. So less focused on, the mundane, put your head down, do this reconciliation, create this report, because that's just busy work. It's really not creating value. Right. And with machine learning on the horizon, that transaction processing stuff is going to disappear. So to me, if you want a solid future in the finance profession, you need to do more, right? You need to do more than transactions, right? I heard a great clip from a guy, and the way he described it is, "What's your extra?"
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one before. Yeah. What's your extra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So anybody can do a journal entry. Anybody can create financial statements. What are you going to do that's extra, that brings this real value, that's different from what somebody else can do?
Yeah, I like that. That's a great mantra. And in fact, you've probably come up with a great title for this podcast, actually, this episode. What's your extra?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, no, that's really good. No, it's really good, really thoughtful provoke, and that comes back to that principle of curiosity as well.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, definitely, and no, I like that. In actual fact, you've outlined some really, really good areas we need to think about developing going forward. I guess that's just part of maybe jumping outside of our comfort zones, right?
Yep. Right. And when I read through your questions, well, the one thing that came to mind is that the one thing that I would convey to people, finance professionals, is your title might say finance, but you're in sales too. Because if you want your organization to change, like, for example, hey, this software is not working for us, we need to buy something new. Well, guess what? You're in sales, because you have to convince a whole bunch of other people to agree with you. That's sales, right? If you want to raise, you're in sales.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. You just reminded me of a book I think I read a while back. I think it was by Dan Pink, To Sell Is Human.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Paul, because it's whether we, I know there's finance professionals that find it a challenge to work with sales colleagues, but there's a lot we can learn from them, because a lot of what we do is sales. If we see something happening in the numbers and we want to be value creating, then we have to take those insights to impact. Influence is a key factor there. Being able to go and sell an idea, or sell what's happening, or tell a story, so that we can take what's in our minds and put it into other people's and have some connection on it. Yeah, you're completely right. So I just don't think we probably put enough emphasis on. And I'm trying to think about, some conversations I had about some accounting exams and syllabuses lately. It's the same back when I did my chartered exams. I don't believe we talked much about influence. I think we probably looked down on the sales team, actually, if anything, which is the wrong way of looking at it. We should be looking to learn not just from sales orgs, but operations, customer service. There's loads of opportunities to go learn and areas to go create value in.
Yes.
And in finance, we've no excuse. We've great access to data, to information, financial and non-financial. We've great access to decision makers. So yeah, we should just go get at it and get out there, get outside our comfort zone. So look, thank you for prompting that, Paul. I hadn't really thought about it like that. So I guess in terms of your work at the moment, what's exciting you most?
What's exciting me most is that I see a change coming, and it's happening, because I don't know about your part of the world, but in my part of the world, roughly 40% of the workforce are now millennials. They don't know any world other than computers.
Yeah.
So the ones that are my generation and older, which tend to be a lot of the existing business owners, are being pushed from the bottom to modernize. right? And so I see this coming, and some of the capabilities I see in software now is really nice. It's like, wow, this stuff can do amazing things.
And like,
So
yeah. So you were saying there, Paul.
so that's what gets me excited, because I see, one of the things that I see is that small businesses that embrace what software can do for them can really compete well with big business.
That I like the fact that you said it. I feel it's quite bold, but what gives you that sense of confidence to say it?
Well, because like, how many times have you been into like, I'll use retail as an example, a large retailer, and there's no customer service, there's no knowledge, there's no personal connection, right? And yes, there's this whole e-commerce thing going, but if these smaller businesses that are not focused on scale, they can use software to compete with these large businesses via e-commerce, but also compete with them on the street with personality.
Yeah, with personality. Yeah, I like that.
Right, and that personal connection, because the people that coming into your store are not buying things; they're buying an experience.
Well said.
And that's
Yeah.
something a large business, it has a tough time delivering.
Yeah. 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 I felt it. I thought it. I never felt as strong as you to be able to articulate it that way, Paul. So I agree. Now, where I'm going to challenge you on, though, is with the, I'd be probably one of the older millennials out there, but in terms of us coming along as a generation, I mean, and our focus on technology and interacting with our machines, do you think we're going to be able to make the most of that? Or business is going to be able to tap into that? Because, from a personal skills perspective, maybe we're not as used to interacting with other human beings. I know I say that tongue in cheek, but like, what do you think? Do you think we have the potential, or do you think that's another challenge to overcome?
Well, I think, this is something that people latch onto in conversation on this thing. But I think what they fail to recognize is that similar conversation has occurred with every generation, right? The words are different, the specifics might be different, but every generation that comes along is different. And the older generation and the younger generation need to have a meeting of minds of how we're going to work together, because there is no other option.
Yeah. Actually, funny you mentioned that. I was going to share this with our audiences. I was speaking with an executive of a large business lately, and I was saying, and actually also in the accounting organization, I was saying we don't leverage those conversations between generations enough, where people share. It's like mentoring and also reverse mentoring at the same time. It's actually sharing knowledge and just having a conversation. And then that's bringing a meeting of minds together. I just don't think we do it enough.
Yep. Well, so in what I do, one of the things that I encourage businesses to do is find the younger people who are going to pick this stuff up really quickly and easily, and have them teach the older ones, be the on-site resources for the ongoing education, encouragement, because that process of teaching and learning also creates that interpersonal understanding between the generations.
Oh no, I can see that. I can see it playing out. I mean, hopefully many listeners here have seen that played out in their own life, whether it's with a parent or a grandparent, or even in a work environment. It does. It's a really good way of developing strong interpersonal bonds and relationships, where people are looking out for each other as well from an opportunities perspective, but also I think from a business perspective, it's a great way of creating value when minds meet like that.
Yes, right. And in terms of your topic of the millennials and their focus on the machines, the one thing that I would suggest, not only to millennials but everybody else in the finance profession, is you need to get out of your office, walk around. The person on the shipping dock can teach you a lot about your business that you had no idea was going on. All you need to do is go out and talk to them. Be curious, ask questions, and they will teach you.
And again, I think that's great advice, Paul. I want to encourage people. We've had previous guest mentors on the show that have said very similar. And there's actually, I said, like, what's the worst thing that could happen from doing that? And they said, well, actually, it was a great thing that happened because I actually learned so much. And I realized I could do this, and I did it more. And I was able to add more value to the business and develop deeper connections with people. I mean, it's a great thing to do. It's something very little downside, if any, and loads of upside.
That's right. Right. You learn so much more about the business. And to me, one of the things I have seen is again, come back to that large business versus small. The large businesses tend to be that very spreadsheet driven focus on the numbers without the connection to what the numbers mean and the impact your decision will have on the customer experience.
Yeah, it comes back to experience. Yeah, and that's a great way of looking for it. If people are doubting whether or not they want to come out from behind their desks, like, are you giving people a great experience, either in your organizations or outside or whatever? You're giving people a great experience of sitting there producing reports or, playing with the transactions or making journals or doing journals. Ask yourself that question, because you got to find some way of motivating yourself to go and give a better experience so you can go and create value for others. Because if we're not creating value, doing that extra, as you say, Paul, then we're very, very fast risk of becoming irrelevant quickly.
Yes. And when you get out and you talk to people and you create that personal connection, they'll listen to you more. When you say, well, we should really do this in our business.
Yeah.
Right. Because now that they've talked to you, you're a real live person, you've got personality. they receive what you say differently.
Oh, some great bits of advice there. Look, I really enjoyed where the conversation went, Paul. But again, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'd like to ask some sort of rapid fire type questions.
Sure.
You've been very giving of advice to us, but what's been the best bit of advice you've ever received?
Probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received was from my father. He says, at the end of every day, you should be able to be proud of what you've achieved. Look yourself in the mirror and say, am I proud of what I've done?
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the things I see is that there's so many people that need external affirmation of their value.
Yeah.
Right? Why does it need to be external? Why can you not value yourself? Be proud of what you've done, and say, well, somebody else might not like it, but I feel it was the right thing to do, and it what I did was in alignment with my core values.
Yeah, I just playing that in my mind there, Paul, and I'm thinking that's something I'm going to start straight away with my kids, because like they're growing up in a generation where it's about how many likes you have, or
yes,
that external validation, the Facebooks, and even to some extent for some of our younger professionals and older on LinkedIn. It's really about did you do the best you could do? Are you proud of what you did? And that should be the main validation that matters. And actually, hopefully, I'm hoping it brings a smile to people's minds, and it turns a frown upside down, as they say. But I think people will be a lot happier if they rediscovered that internal validation.
Yes, I completely agree, and that's why when I saw when you asked this question, that's what I thought. Well, to me, this is a huge frame of mind that can help you continue to move forward regardless of what happens around you.
That's I imagine you've probably had to draw on that on a number of occasions in your career, your life. Is there I know it's probably personal to ask, but would you mind sharing any with us?
That one's a tough one to pull an example of.
Yeah.
I guess, I'm not sure if it's going to line up perfectly, but when I was in my 20s, I was presented with the opportunity to pack everything up and go and live in Japan. And so I'm saying, it's a risk, and my career. And at the end of it, I had to come back to my core values and say to myself, what would you rather do when you wake up when you're 50 and say, oh, I wish I had gone, or wake up and say, oh, what were you thinking? But at least, to me, I decided that if I go, there's no regrets. So that I can be, I go and it was a complete disaster. But at least I can look myself in the mirror and say, you tried. You gave it a try. You had an opportunity. You gave it a try. It didn't work out. Okay. What next?
And actually, how did it go?
Well, I ended up spending 3 years there.
So it must have been okay in the end, right?
Yeah, I think it worked out okay.
Excellent. No, I love that. Thanks for sharing with us that, Paul. It's a personal story. And I suppose in terms of maybe resources you could perhaps recommend our audience, would there be a book or anything else you could recommend we follow up on?
Well, I'll come back to this notion that everybody's in sales. So a book that I would recommend is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Excellent choice. Yeah, and again, if this was, I would say I was quite inept at relating to people until I actually read that book, and that really helped me understand how you should go about interacting with people in the right way. And it's a classic. It's been around for goodness knows what, about 100
almost 100 years. I think it was written in the 30s.
Yeah, and I think some people might have even had an attempt to update it for like the digital age and things like that. But it's again the original. I would say I read that at least once a year, just to refresh my mind, because it's such good timeless knowledge. And I have to be grateful for the person who recommended that to me as a psychologist.
Okay.
So yeah, I was lacking in certain areas, and he said you should read that book, and lo and behold, I've been able to get by life until now, thanks to that book. Helping me understand how we should be interacting with people in the right way, and it's very simple, common sense advice which I was lacking at the time. So, great recommendation, Paul. And
thanks.
Look, you've been very open, shared great advice with us, very valuable advice. If our audience wish to connect with you or reach out to you, where's the best place to find you at?
You can reach out on LinkedIn or via email. paul.sweeney@flexus.biz, flexxus.biz.
Fantastic, Paul. And I'll put those links mentioned in the show into the show notes as well. And,
okay. My goal was to try to convey some things to people in the profession to kind of, I guess, trigger them to think and say, to ask themselves some questions.
Because I think you've done that successfully, because the questions you asked in terms of, am I proud of what I did today, or what's my extra? They do sort of stop you to stop and think. Like that they're innately they stop you to okay, and I know they're introverted in a way, those questions, but I guess that's the aim of them, right?
Well, it is, because you can't change your external world until you change you.
That's it.
Right? So if you are not open to changing yourself, how can you create that openness in the world around you? Right? And so I would say, I can think of a specific case where there's a young guy getting started in the finance world, and to an extent he's all over the software, but to another extent he is so narrowly focused that he is forgetting that the software is just a tool.
You know where that conversation could relate a lot today in finance is Excel.
Yes, absolutely.
That's why I had to laugh.
At the end of the day, it's just a tool, and many times I ask people, is it the right tool? Yes, it's flexible. Yes, it's powerful, but it's not the only tool you should be using.
Well, not when people around us have been asking that question and developing solutions to challenge the notion that Excel is the best tool. and actually it was our most popular podcast stroke debate was is Excel dead? And it went and got hundreds of thousands of views on LinkedIn alone, because people were very passionate one way or the other. And the true answer is it's still a great tool. It just may not be the best tool in all scenarios. Depends what you want to use it for.
So like people ask, we talk about reports, and so one of the things I say to people is there's really two kinds of reports. There's operational reports, where you're going to run that report every day, every week, every month, whatever the cycle might be. You're going to look at it, and then you're finished. Then there's analytical reports, where you're asking a question, and the question might change, the way you want to look at the data might change. Well, the analytical stuff, Excel does exceptionally well. The operational things, I would say Excel's not the best tool. And that's just how I look at it.
Definitely. Well, you're talking to a guy who basically ran a business for 10 years off the back of Excel. I know small businesses have to fail and medium-sized enterprises have to, but even large ones do. If you look at the Fortune 500 lists and how they progress over time. And like, you have to imagine a lot of these businesses, small, medium, large, have finance support in some shape or another. And you know, are they the best type of support? Are we asking the wrong types of questions or whatever? But we have to be doing better than the statistic of, you know, after 30, 35 years, 9 out of 10 businesses failing. You know, we're smarter than that, surely.
Yes, but you know, there's so many things that influence a business's success or failure, right? And some of them are a train wreck that you're just watching and you can't do anything about. Other ones are a complete surprise. Yeah. And other ones are thoroughly preventable, right? But sometimes, you know, the person that sees it, the beginnings of it, doesn't have the salesmanship to convince the rest that, oh, this is an issue.
So I'm with you on those categorizations, and it's just my frustration is probably most with those preventable ones, because we've the skills definitely to assess them. But where's the salesmanship skills to bring them to fruition, to share them in the right way with people, to tell the right story about it, paint the picture, and get people to take action?
Yes. Yeah.
So just thinking about it, Paul, what does good salesmanship look like for you?
Good salesmanship is good storytelling. So I decided, you know what? I need to improve my ability to tell a story. So I'm going to join Toastmasters to work on that. Oh
wow! I remember I was mentoring someone, and they joined Toastmasters for very similar reasons. And how are you finding it?
Oh, I just started, I think 2 weeks ago, but it's good. I mean, the piece that I've seen right off the top is that they're very focused on giving everybody the opportunity to stand up and speak in various different ways, so that you become comfortable with it. Because I see a lot of people are very nervous about standing up and talking, right? And the biggest part of that nervousness is you don't have the experience to realize, well, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, you know, the structure, I think, is really good for helping people become comfortable. You know, and I think, you know, taking it back to the finance professionals who can be more on the introverted side and don't necessarily have a lot of experience standing up in front of a group, I think Toastmasters would be a great way to enhance your ability to convey to people why they should listen to what you're saying.
Paul, look, you've been fantastic. Yes, I mean, we jumped around a bit on a nice little journey there, actually, in terms of where you sort of found some opportunities for us to go and create value in finance and practical advice on how to make it happen, particularly around being a bit more curious, engaging, knowing some of the tools out there that exist, and also helping us find our extra as well in terms of what should that be. So again, just really appreciate you adding value to our community and helping us build our strength in the numbers and coming on the show today.
Great. Thanks for inviting. I appreciate being here. It's been a great experience.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.